Hello everyone, Mr. Eccles back again with another Scratch instruction video. This time we're going to look at how to make an emoji generator, and you will all be able to see in your Junior Challenge Projects studio that there are two files that you can use. There is the finished version, or certainly as finished as I have done. You can take it much further, and the starter program. So let's have a look at what I've made so far. So if we click on the green flag, you'll see what we have is an emoji on the right hand side and a set of buttons on the left hand side to change elements. Now the really cool thing about this project is, one, it works really well on iPads because it just uses touch. You can tap these different buttons. And two, it doesn't actually involve much coding. This is more of a design project. I'm going to take you through the coding that you need to do, and there are instructions available, but actually this is more about creating new costumes and new sprites in Scratch. So first of all, if I click on buttons, I'll click on the eyes and you'll see I can change to different eyes. I'm going to click on the nose, click on a mouth, click on the head, and you'll also see that I've put a colour palette there and a cross. What they do, if you click on the colour palette, it cycles through different colour effects. So for example, if you wanted pink, as I'm sure some of you do, then you can go for a pink, well, whatever that is. If you want to reset the colours, then you just click on the cross. So it's quite a cool project. I've already created quite a few costumes, but you'll notice that I haven't created anything like the amount that you can do. And obviously you can get really creative with this and start to create emojis that don't exist and that you've always wished that you could use. So first thing you need to do is go to your class studio. So let's just again choose one at random. I'll click on 3UI, Junior Challenge Projects. If you click on the Emoji Maker Starter Program, you will see that I have put in here, click See Inside and remix the project. I can't remix it because it's my project, so I'll just save it as a copy and say Emoji Starter Project. Call it Emoji Maker 2, and I'm going to make sure that I save that. So let's have a look at what we have first. You'll see the sprites that we have. We have a sprite for the eyes, a sprite for the nose, a sprite for the mouth, for the head, and then we have these buttons, a sprite for each of these buttons. So the eyes, nose, head, mouth, the colour palette, and reset colour buttons. And then there are two sprites here for the two white panels. If we look at the head sprite, for example, and look at the costumes, you'll see that I've created here a number of different costumes. Now, these can be a little bit tricky to make, but using the sprite image editor here, I created all these, and I'm no great artist, so I'm sure you can do something even better. But you'll see that there are 8 different costumes for the head. There's 14, including a blank one for the mouth. Only 2 and a blank one for the nose. I didn't get much inspiration there. And for the eyes, I have 17 different costumes. But that only really scratches the surface of the different options that you can have for emojis. So there's loads of opportunity here for you to create your own, and you can create your own from a blank one or simply by editing the ones that I've already done. But I'll show you that a little bit later in the video. The first thing that we need to do is add just a little bit of code so that this works. At the moment, if I click the green flag and click on these buttons, nothing happens. So the first thing I need to do is make this work. We're going to use something called broadcasts in this project. Now, some of you will know about them already, but if you don't, broadcasts are incredibly useful in Scratch. What they allow us to do is send a message to the rest of the Scratch application. So we can say something has happened, and then another sprite can pick up that message and do something. Now, if that doesn't make sense, hopefully when I've done this little bit of code, you'll be able to see why broadcasts are so useful. What we're going to say is when each of these buttons are clicked, we're going to broadcast a different message. When the top one is clicked, we're going to broadcast a message to change the head costume. When the eyes button is clicked, we're going to broadcast a message to change the eyes costume. So we really don't have to add very much, but what I'm going to do is say click on the head button first and say when this sprite is clicked, broadcast a message. Now if I click down on here, I can create a new message, and I'm going to say CH for change, and I'm going to say head. So whenever that head button is clicked now, it's going to broadcast a message that says change the head. What I'm going to do in a minute with the head sprite is say when I receive this message, change the costume of the head. First thing I'm going to do is go through all the other buttons first. So the nose button, I'm going to say when this sprite is clicked, broadcast a new message, and I'm going to call that change nose. When the eyes button is clicked, I'm going to broadcast a message called change eyes. When the mouth button is clicked, I think you can see a pattern here, I'm going to broadcast a message called change mouth. When the colour button is clicked, I'm going to broadcast a message called change colour. And when the cross is clicked, I'm going to broadcast a message called reset colour. Okay, so now all of my buttons, all 6 buttons, broadcast a different message when they are clicked, or for the purpose of using an iPad, when they are tapped, when the screen is tapped. So the next thing I need to do is to start to get my sprites, my eyes, mouth, nose and eyes, to react to these buttons. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the starting point for them. So for my head, I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to switch the costume, and if you look at the costumes, I think it's best to start on the classic, but you might want to start on a different one. So I'm going to start on classic. Okay, and then when the eyes are clicked, I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, change the costume to classic. And when the nose first appears, I don't actually want it to have a nose, so I'm going to say when the green flag is clicked, switch the costume to none, and then when the mouth first appears, I want that to be when the green flag is clicked. Switch the costume to, let's just have a smile. Okay, so now if I click the green flag, that is how my application is going to start. Next thing that I need to do is add some code to each of the eyes, nose, mouth and head to say when these buttons are clicked, when the broadcast is received, move to the next costume. And again, that's really simple to do, so I'll start with the eyes. I just say when I receive the broadcast change eyes, so that means the change eyes button has been clicked, then I need to go to the next costume. For the nose, exactly the same. When I receive change nose, go to the next costume. For the mouth, exactly the same. When I receive change mouth, next costume. And finally for the head, I'm going to say when I receive change head, go to the next costume. And now if I run this, you'll see already that this is working. The final bit that I need to do is make these colour buttons work. At the moment they're not doing anything. So, not difficult again. The buttons are broadcasting a message saying broadcast change colour. So all I need to do is say on the head, which is what I want to change colour, I'm going to say when I receive change colour, and there is in the looks block there is a change colour effect. Now you might want to play with this, but I found that 5 does quite nice subtle changes. If you want bigger changes, then you want a bigger number. But basically what this does is change the hue of the colour, and it will go through a whole range of colours and eventually end up back where it started. So it goes through the whole range of colours. So now if I click the green flag, I'll have love heart eyes, nose and that mouth, and if I click on this you'll see it's starting to change the colour. I added the cross button just because sometimes you might want it to go back to the original colour. So all we need to do there, the cross is broadcasting the message reset the colour. So if I go back to the head and say when I receive reset colour, go to looks, and then I just need to clear the graphic effect that has been put on by this block above it. The final bit of code is just to correct a problem that can happen while you're editing. So let me give you an example of this. Sometimes if you click, let's say we click on the head and move it, it moves it in front of the eyes and the mouth and the nose, and if we click on the panel and slightly move that, it moves it in front and we can't see anything else. So what we need to do is just add a little bit of code to position these sprites relative to each other correctly. So I'll show you how to do that. There's only a few things that we need to add. What we want is the 2 panels at the back, and then we want the head in front of that, and then we want everything else in front of the head. So to do that, the easiest way is if we click on the emoji panel first and say when the green flag is clicked, we want to go to the back letter, and we want exactly the same thing for the button panel as well. So when the green flag is clicked, go to the back layer, and that now deals with that bit, but it hasn't dealt with the fact that the mouth is behind the head. So for the head, we need to do something similar and say when the green flag is clicked, move to the back layer and then move forward one layer so it's in front of the panels. So to do that, we just use that one. So now if we click the green flag, everything is in the right place. And that is all the code that you need to add. So the next thing that we can do is start to have a look at how we can add extra costumes for the eyes, nose, mouth and head. And to do that, let's have a look at the head first. If you click on the costumes, you'll see that I've made, well, there's 7 there for the head. And I'm just going to take you through this image editing palette in Scratch, but I think the best advice I can give is to have a play with this. Expect things to go wrong. There is a back button here, which is very useful, and if everything goes completely wrong, just delete the sprite that you're working on and start again. So the other bit of advice I would give is when you're working on a sprite to copy it first by right clicking and click duplicate so that you still have the original sprite if it all goes horribly wrong. So let's have a look at the tools that we have available to us. It's quite a limited palette, but it's actually each of these tools is quite useful and quite powerful in their own right. We have a pointer tool, which allows us to move a shape around, but also to resize it. And if you drag from the corner of a sprite, then it will keep the aspect ratio the same, and so you don't get a sort of squashed circle or anything like that. If you want a squashed circle, then all you do is drag from the side. So if I just go back a few times. So that's the pointer tool. The brush tool you might use if you're going to start to draw more intricate elements on a sprite, but all you do is choose the brush tool, choose a colour and draw away. So that's fairly straightforward, I think. The fill tool I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail. The fill tool, if we draw a shape, obviously allows us to fill it with a colour. But it also has a more powerful element of filling where if we want to, let me show you on this head sprite, we can choose not just a fill colour but a gradient colour. So we can choose 2 colours that the fill will then do a gradient between the first and the second colour. So if I change the first colour, let's change them to quite different colours so you can see what's going on there. You'll see that I have a nice gradient, and I've used those in all the head sprites and in a few of the other sprites as well. You'll also see on this head sprite that on top of the circle I also have this shape, and I'll explain to you how we do that in a moment. So we have a line tool, a rectangle and a circle. Another tip, if you want to draw a perfect square or a perfect circle, if you hold the shift key down while you draw, it will draw a perfect square or a perfect circle. The other tool that I really just want to explain to you a little bit is this reshape tool, which is really useful, and that's how I've made this shape here. And this shape is used to put a kind of light effect onto the sprite, and it's quite a nice effect, and it's using a few of these tools. The first is I've drawn a circle. Let me just delete some of these so you can see what's going on. So to create this sort of semicircle, what I've done is created, let's just create a simple white circle first with no outline, and this red diagonal line means none there, so no outline or no fill, and is really useful, as I'll show you in a moment. So I'm going to create a white circle with no outline. Hold the shift key down to make sure it's a perfect circle, and then put that inside there so that I know it's about the right size. I can just resize it maybe a little bit. Okay, now what I want to create this, the select tool, what I want to create this is to take away the bottom half, just kind of make it less of a regular shape, and also to put a gradient on so that the gradient goes from white to transparent. So to do that, the first thing I use is the reshape tool, and I can push the edges in. Now this may go wrong more often than it goes right, but don't worry about that. Just if it goes horribly wrong, just delete it and start again. This looks like it is going horribly wrong, but we'll go with it anyway. So there is something resembling a semicircle, and the bit that I really want to show you is how I put the gradient on this. So if I select the fill tool and then say I want, these are the gradient tools at the top here, if I put on the vertical gradient and say I want it to go from white at the top to transparent, so nothing here, and then click on there, you'll see I have put the gradient on this tool. And like I said earlier, these things just need to be played with a little bit, and you'll see if you just take a bit of time to do that, you can make it look, well, a little bit better than I have there. Okay, so that's how I created all these heads. Obviously what you can do if you want to create a different head is copy one, and then if, for example, again, you can see these are just the circle shape with a gradient, a semicircle with a transparent gradient, and then two horn shapes that I created. Actually what I did was create one and then copied it and then just rotated it so that it looked exactly the same on the other side. But if you wanted these to look more like that, so you can see it's quite easy to move some existing shapes, and if, for example, you've made a mess of one like I have with this, you can, because I copied it, you can simply delete it. I'm going to keep that one, I quite like it. Okay, the final thing then is I'll just show you from scratch to drawing one of the costumes. So I don't have many noses on there, so I'll try and draw a nose. I think what I will do is draw a red nose so that it can be used as a Rudolph nose at Christmas, or used as a sprite for, as an emoji for Red Nose Day. So first thing I need to do is go to the costumes for the noses and click on paint, so I get a blank costume, and I'm going to call it Red Nose. And I'm going to choose the circle and give it, have a play with these sliders, but saturation is how much of the colour. Colour is the actual shade of the colour, and brightness is obviously how bright the colour is. So I want a nice bright red nose, and I'm going to give it an outline that is a kind of darker red, and that's set on number 4. I'm going to change that to number 5. And no, don't like that. I'm going to change that and then change that to number 3. Okay, that's starting to look more like what I wanted. So I'm going to line up the crosshair so that it's in the centre, and you'll see I've now got a red nose. But as I showed you before, what I want is a sort of light effect on this nose to make it look more professional. So the next thing that I'm going to do is draw another circle. I'm going to give that no outline, and I'm going to make it white. And yeah, full brightness white, and then I'm going to put a gradient on it, and the gradient's going to be from white to transparent, so you'll see at the bottom the red shines through, but at the top it's white. Now I could just leave it like that, or I could start to try and transform this a little bit so that I get more of an effect. That's obviously totally up to you. But if it starts to go wrong, click back and you'll end up there again, and I'll give it another go. So I click on the transparent and white circle, I'm going to push it up. That's not too bad. Go back a little bit. That bit didn't go right. So you can see what I've got to do here is, just because I'm not an amazing artist, is to try and just play with this till I get it right. Let's try moving that bit up there and that bit up there, and you'll see what I'm starting to get is the effect that I'm after. Actually what I want is it further up there, further up there, and I just need to play with that until I get it right. But you can see I'm starting to get the right effect there. And now you will see, if I click the green flag, I go back to the start, but if I click on the noses, I now have my new red nose as an option there. So this takes a little bit of playing with, and a lot of it will depend on how much time you're willing to spend on it, but you can see all these are just simple shapes that I've created and played around with. So have a go with the different costumes, have a go playing with the different tools that you can, and see how creative you can get with this and how far you can take this application that I've started. Most importantly, make sure you enjoy doing it, and I look forward to seeing what you make. Good luck everybody.